Hello guys, welcome back to another video explanation. In this case, we're going to cover our newest topic, future modals. Now, as you might remember, this is a fairly short topic, so the video itself is going to be short. If you have a hard time keeping up with the topic, feel free to pause the video so you can take your notes comfortably. Okay? Now, let's get started. First, we have to ask ourselves, what do we express with future modals? And that's fairly simple. We express future probability. Now, imagine that you have your best friend, right? Now, your best friend gets dumped. Now, we have two different types of people, right? We can have somebody like Tanjiro who says, don't worry, you'll find someone better. But we can also have somebody like Zenitsu who says, well, yeah, but you might also find someone worse. And here we can see two different modals being used. So on Tanjiro's side, we have the modal will. And on Zenitsu's side, we have the modal might. Now, I want you guys to think of how many modals do you know? Well, if you are watching this presentation, this is after we saw the topic in class, so you might already know the answer, right? Or you should already know the answer. We saw four different modals. We saw will, could, might, and may. Now, we have these four different modals, so sometimes it's kind of hard to know when to use each modal, like what situation is each one for, right? So the trick is simple. It's basically like depending what you want to express, you're gonna use a different modal. Well, let's start by explaining how can we use will, okay? So we use will or won't if we are certain about something in the future. So to express certainty, we use will or won't. Let's put it in simpler terms. If you're sure about something, you're going to use will or won't. And let's see one of the examples. If there is an accident, then it will be huge and it will have long-term effects on the environment. Now, this is one of the examples that we covered in the book. Remember that the book covers specific topics each unit. So in this unit, we're talking about the environment. So we're going to see a lot of different environment related sentences throughout the presentation. Again, this is will or won't. Now, what about the others? So again, the book kind of puts these into the same category. And they're in the category that expresses uncertainty. So if you are uncertain about something in the future, you can use could, might, or may. And we can see it in this example. We're going to use for our example, let's say could. So I'll read the example. We'll briefly discuss how this type of farming could solve some of the environmental problems we're now facing. Now, in the same way, you guys can use might, or you can also use may. We can use these three to express uncertainty. So if we can use three, how am I going to know which one I need to use? Like, what's the difference between these three? Now, the book only shows us this difference. And it mentions that might is more common in everyday English, normal conversations, right? And it puts may as sounding more formal. This is the only difference the book makes. So this is the only difference we're going to cover on the exam, okay? Meaning that might and could, they just express uncertainty and they are the same. Okay. Remember, we are taking the information from the book. Okay. Now let's move on to the structure. We're going to cover this example. It will have long-term effects. And this is the structure that we have. You always need your subject, your modal, your verb, and the complement. We have to remember that the modal, in the modal, we can use four different modals, right? Will, could, might, or may. And the verb is going to be in the base form. And like we already covered, depending on what you want to say is the modal that you're going to use. Okay? Remember this for the example. Now, how can we make this example negative? Exactly. We add not to the modal itself. And we would have, it will not have long-term effects. Now, do you guys have any questions? Hopefully not, but if you do, try and do these. Even though we already did them in the classroom, try and do them without reviewing your notes or anything and see if you are correct. with the correct answers that you should already have in your notebook. Now, I want to thank you for paying attention. Keep practicing. Remember that all the information that is presented here is from your book. Okay? If you still have any questions, feel free to ask me in class. Send me maybe a message on Blackboard or an email. All right? But that's it. See you. Take care. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in class.